all the biggest potential I've seen to make like large dollar mistakes in tournaments happen pre-flop. If I had made day 3, which like wasn't even that hard to do, I would have missed the wedding. So I just like booked everything as if I was going to leave early on day 2, and like no surprise I bust on day 1. I feel like I like set myself up to just light 10K on fire and then go straight to the wedding. I would say like 3 or 4 years after Black Friday is when people started talking about like the shift of like all the skilled players being outside the US and the US kind of weakening.
How's WPT going for you?
Good. I mean, I can't complain. I've put in the minimum amount of hours and I have chips in a bag, and I just get to take 3 days off and wait for day 2. So that's the dream, really.
You know what I realized when I busted yesterday that I was so happy about was that I don't have to stay up till 11.
Yeah.
Are you?
No, I think about that too.
Yeah.
No, that's a big, this is how you can tell that I'm like old and withered, in that I just like lost my intensity for some of these things. Because definitely when I first started coming to tournament stops, I was like, it's all about the EV. If I have to bust 11 hours into the day and play the whole day tomorrow, I'll do it. I don't care. And now I'm like, I could really use a good night's rest. I would love to bust at 5 o'clock so that I don't even have to come back after dinner break. And so I'll be fresh for day 1B or whatever.
Do you think you would do it differently, younger? Like, do you think you were, like, do you think like your maturity has made you realize like that mindset's not worth it, or has like the stakes been raised on how tired you feel? You know, like I just feel more tired and more and more.
Yeah, I don't know that I would change anything for like my younger self approach. I mean, I've thought about this before when it came to like right after Black Friday, for example. This is going way back, but I moved to Canada. I didn't have that much money. Well, I had like negative money, technically speaking, and I just like did nothing but play poker for 2 years. I mean, I did like little things here and there, but really it was just like a ridiculous amount of poker. And I don't think that was like, that accelerated everything, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't, I mean, maybe I just wasn't self-aware. I don't know if I was burnt out. I probably was burnt out, but it just like didn't matter that much when I was 22.
If you don't notice you're burnt out, I think you're not burnt out.
Okay.
Right?
I don't know.
I don't know how there's like it's kind of like saying if I don't feel angry, I'm not angry.
Yeah.
On some level.
I mean, I do think, well, this gets talked about, I'm sure, in like many different ways, but you know, people usually like work themselves past the point of what they realize that they're working themselves towards. And then like when you crash, it's like, oh, I shouldn't have gotten to the point of crashing. Like I probably should have cut that off sometime earlier in like a healthier way. But I definitely overcorrected at some point. Like there's I don't know, like when you get to a point where you're comfortable enough and where you're not relying as much on like the day-to-day EV of the tournament outcome.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, well, how do I make sure that I'm motivated? I don't even make sure that I'm motivated, but like, where does my motivation come from to show up and play?
Yeah.
Is a little bit different than it used to be. It used to just be like, oh, well, I need to make money and I'm a poker player, so I play poker. And now there's like competing things, right? Now it's like, well, I have coaching work that I'm behind on. Oh, I have like a new project I want to investigate. Oh, I have like family I need to catch up with.
Do you think your hunger though also came from, like, your desire to like play and grind came from other things other than money? Like in terms of like wanting to establish yourself as a poker player, or like establish yourself as like a winning tournament player when you're switching to tournament, or like, because like, there's other things that once you've been in it longer, you feel more self-assured about, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's maybe more a factor now than it was then, actually. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to put myself like in the head of 22-year-old me, but I don't remember thinking that much. No, it was probably a factor always, because I'm thinking about like all the time I spent on 2+2 forums, for example. Like I would freely share information with other players. I would connect with other players and just like talk about the game. And I feel like the motivation behind that is at least in part like a status thing.
Sure.
or whatever you want to call building that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
That's why I was drawn to coaching too, I'm sure, is just like, not only that I'm good at it, but also that it feels good to like be in a position where you can help people.
Yeah.
So I think that's still important to me. Maybe I'm just like more cognizant of it now than I was back then. But that's always part of it for sure. I mean, and in tournament poker, I don't know, I've advised a lot of people on like, if you're playing big field live tournaments as your sole source of income, like that is, I don't want to just say that is a terrible idea, but that's kind of how it feels, right? Like it's really hard to make that work. You need to
Just because of the swings or because
like
the time?
Like the time that you have to invest to a single tournament is really high.
Yeah.
And I'm specifically talking about large field live MTTs, right? There's ways to make a living in tournament poker that's not so risky. But playing in big fields, like playing the stuff that we're playing this week, that can't sustain you. Like you can't,
Right.
unless you're already comfortable, in which case it's not really sustaining you, right? It's like your savings that's sustaining you. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I think because when I look back to when I was younger, the thing that drove me to like grind and hustle was far more like wanting to establish myself in a community, like which is status, right? Like wanting to have more status, wanting to have more. And now I just like care so much less, and so I'm just like I realized once that went away how much of it was that, because it's like I have no real motivation to, which is why I'm kind of moving out of poker too. Just sure, it's like it's not the thing that I always thought that the thing that I wanted to be a poker player, and I think I've noticed that it's not so much that I enjoy the strategy, I enjoy the stuff, but like moving into coaching and stuff like that has been far more like that's what I enjoy, being able to do something like that. Man, what's funny? It's just like I feel like, and do you think poker's growing?
Yeah, for sure.
I know a lot of people are kind of like pessimistic about the state of poker, but like MTT events keep getting, like all the big events keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
I mean, it seems like it's growing if for no other reason than the international reach that companies have been driving. Like some of the companies that have grown the most in the last, let's say like 5 years online, have been ones who have unlocked markets that weren't really connected to the rest of the world before. So I guess like in that sense, it has to be growing. Like you're just seeing more people. It depends where you play, like if you're going to actually overlap with those players. But when I was like first learning the game, in my mind, it was just an American game, like the whole.
Was that true?
Online, like I think the number was 70% of the online traffic was in the United States when Full Tilt went down. So like when Black Friday happens, they lost 70 or 75% of their customers.
Is that much?
Overnight. Yeah. You can see why they went bankrupt. I mean.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm even thinking like, so what was it just horribly depressing switching to like continuing to try to play? Because you moved to Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The games were still like playing in Canada, playing against rest of world. It was still a good game.
Yeah.
But
I just imagine the traffic massively dipped.
So I wasn't playing that high. So I don't know that I really noticed. Like if you're playing small stakes or mid stakes cash, there's a game for you.
There's always games.
There were games. Yeah, I didn't really notice. I'm sure someone who was playing like the biggest games at that time could probably tell you more accurately if like action really dried up in specific parts of the game, but like I didn't notice. I was able to go right back to playing what I wanted to play.
Was it because right now there's sort of reputationally like US players are worse than say like European players, I would say, generally speaking.
That does seem to be the
reputational. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know. But was that true then? Reputationally, when like 75% of players were US based?
No, it was inverse. So when I was first playing, the idea was like if you could get on the Euro sites, you were getting access to like the soft games. Like people would be hustling the same way that people now are trying to get
like Michigan.
I mean, I guess this is already like people try to access Ignition or people try to access like the American games from out of country. That same thing was true about like I don't remember if Winamax was a site when I'm thinking it was like the big site when I'm thinking, but Winamax, for example, like a European market centered around like France, were the sites that everyone was like, oh, if I could only play on those games, and I'd go to Canada, and all of a sudden you had access to a few more sites. Forget specifically which ones, maybe iPoker Network or whatever.
iPoker's been around that long?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they've been around a long time.
Man. So do you think, so it must be just like time just paused for US and like everybody kept going and playing and getting better.
Yeah.
And then we didn't have access to online sites, so no one was getting better.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like the general pool on average, I guess, was just not getting better.
I would say like 3 or 4 years after Black Friday is when people started talking about like the shift of like all the skilled players being outside the US and the US kind of weakening.
Man, that's wild. That's fascinating. I just come, I just coming in from the middle. It's always like Europeans have this image, so I used to do memory sports, and it was the same perception in memory sports for a while. It's not anymore. The guy who's best at it is, I'm not plugged in anymore, but his name still is Alex Mullen, but I don't know if he's still the best, but he was. But for a long time, it was like the Europeans are better at memory sports. So for some reason, I just have this impression that Europeans have always been better at things than us stupid Americans. But
I mean, it's like, I don't know, all the players who you see on like TV who have been around forever, not all, but like a huge percentage of them came up in like underground games in the US, and then eventually public games in the US, and then eventually the World Series of Poker, right? So like that's all an American player pool.
yeah. What are your do you have still like a lot of big poker, like do you have poker aspirations, goals that you feel like you haven't hit yet? You haven't won a bracelet.
I mean, I haven't won a bracelet. I haven't won a live tournament, period. which is that's the number one goal.
win a live tournament.
It's a little silly. I mean, it's to some extent it speaks to like the attention split that I have like in my life. It's like a point in my career where live tournaments are my main game, but like the game itself is not my only game.
Yeah.
So it is hard for me to put in like serious volume in live tournaments, which makes it hard to win a live tournament. But at the same time, like that's my game. I haven't played other games for 4 years now, so I should have won one. But it's
if there was any justice in the universe,
that's a pretty important. No, just like for me personally, from feeling good about myself as a professional, like that.
You don't have like a string of seconds, do you? I know you have a couple.
Is it 3? I have 3 major seconds.
3 major seconds.
Yeah,
that's tough. That's enough.
Yeah,
that's enough. 4 seconds that we're starting to get.
That would be
maybe. What's the record for seconds without a first? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Oh, you should go for that.
I hope.
That should be your new aspiration.
No. I hope no one's tracking that stat, and I would prefer if no one ever did.
I feel like someone has to have tracked like the person who has like come closest to a bracelet without winning.
I do think that's and my like unfortunately for him, my friend Jake Schwartz comes to mind. I think he has like a reputation for this, and if memory serves, he has not won a bracelet or a WPT event, but like has been around forever and has been at final tables all the time. So like I'm sure there's a number there, and I apologize, Jake, for putting your name out there as like maybe number one person. I hope I'm just wrong. I hope my memory, like, I hope he just won a WPT at some point and I just forgot. But
I think it'll be funny if after this conversation someone goes and looks and you just and he's the guy that
he's just got like 47 seconds
and he's just smashing his computer just as we have this conversation.
I apologize. Yeah. But there are always, I mean, I know every time like there's like a maiden bracelet won by somebody.
Who was it for a while who hadn't? There's someone.
Well, there's a bunch of names. Like I think it was either 2022 or 2023. There were like a bunch of top name pros who won their first bracelet. Dan Smith won his first bracelet.
Dan Smith was the
one
I
heads
remember.
Up event.
Yeah.
That I was referring to. Brewer won his first bracelet.
Oh yeah.
This year, I think.
Was it this year?
If I remember correctly.
I remember Dan Smith being a big deal.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of those. Like you see a lot of high roller. Like I'm just thinking of high rollers now, but you see a lot of those names a lot because they play all the Tritons, they play all the EPT high rollers, they play all this stuff that like gets visibility. But it's hard to win a no limit bracelet unless you win a high roller because all these no limit bracelets have like 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 players, right?
Right.
So we know those names really well. Whereas like someone from 10 years prior, before the super high rollers were really a big thing, anyone's name we know because they won a bracelet.
Yeah.
Now we like know more tournament names.
Yeah.
Because of all the other tours.
So, win a tournament. Anything else? Like, do you have like? Are you viewing yourself as like on the tail end of your like sort of like professional poker career, or like tail end meaning like?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like it is complicated for me because in terms of like what I'm excited about right now, I'm excited about coaching first, and I think that like. It would be equally rewarding to me to be coaching someone who like wins their first bracelet as it would be for me to win my own first bracelet, and likewise for like a Triton title or like an EPT high roller, whatever. But I still like at least the way that I see my career right now, I intend to put equal weight to those things. So like both of them would be really rewarding.
I see.
And they do kind of go hand in hand. Like I think that my coaching gets better if I'm just there in the games.
Yes.
And I think that my playing gets better if I'm working with people.
Yeah.
So I would put those on level terms. I don't see one as like,
Do you want to be like an Eric
overtaking the other.
Seidel, who is just like,
I mean, yeah, why
mean, the
not?
guy's a
Like,
legend.
that would be an
he just
amazing
won,
reputation.
He just won a bracelet, didn't he?
He did in the Bahamas, yeah.
He's his 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Yeah, I mean, not only has he been playing like all of the games we just talked about, like the high rollers and the old World Series events and everything in between, but like, I don't know, I think he's top 10 on the all-time money list.
Yeah.
Which is not an easy task these days because of like how big the buy-ins are.
Yeah. And he's been relevant forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I think that'd be like I guess I was curious because I think a lot of people, like for myself, like I played poker for however long I did. And right now I'm not feeling like a huge drive. I'll probably keep playing, but like a huge drive to like stay competitive in poker, if you will. I guess I was curious, do you see yourself trying to stay competitive for like as long as you can?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's important to me.
Yeah.
I think it would be hard to stay in poker without feeling competitive. Like this is something I just know about myself in general. Like I don't like to do things poorly. You know, I'm not going to devote a bunch of my time and attention to something that I'm not succeeding at.
Yeah.
So it would be like, yeah, if I didn't feel like I was in the game, I would just leave the game. You know, I wouldn't want to half be in it.
Do you take your ultimate frisbee life just as seriously?
With as much self-control as I can, I place poker above ultimate frisbee. There have been weak points in my life where I have done the opposite and I have placed ultimate frisbee over poker. Specifically when I was living at home and mostly playing online, and also like during the summer when it's just really nice to be outside and play frisbee. Honestly, it was just like, so early when I moved to Toronto, it was right after Black Friday, so like late 2011. Like I said, I was just playing poker all the time. One of my roommates, Henry Chan, and myself were just like a little more social than our other roommates. Like I don't know if social is the right word, but we just like wanted to be outside more. They were like more happy just playing 16 hours and ordering takeout food.
Yeah.
And like we all did that many days, but
yeah.
Once a week, twice a week, like we tried to get outside. And actually all of us did. Like, so I tried a bunch of, for whatever reason, we just like looked into social sport leagues as a way to like get some exercise and meet some people in Toronto. So like one night a week for a while, I was playing basketball with my roommate, Tom. One night a week, I was playing badminton with my roommate, Neil. And then 1 or 2 nights a week, I was playing ultimate frisbee with Henry. So like between
were they also playing all of these things?
No, I think that was just me.
So
I don't know that was all at the same time. This was just like to give an idea of what I was trying to do to just like get outside and be out of poker for at least a couple hours a week.
Before we get how good are you at basketball?
Terrible.
I just love the image of you playing basketball.
Do I look like I would be good?
No, that's why it was for you to say the first thing, like once a week I was playing basketball.
No.
I was like, that sounds
Tom's pretty good. So like
I met Tom.
He's like, yeah, I think you did.
In Austin, right?
Exactly.
Yes,
yeah.
Okay.
So he's like 6 inches taller than me.
Yeah.
And actually played basketball when he was younger. I'm neither of those things. So 5'7".
Okay. Just 6 inches could sound like a lot taller than you, but
thanks. Yeah.
No.
Anyway, suffice to say, those other sports didn't stick. Partly because I wasn't very good, and partly because frisbee was just really fun. So I met a lot of people who I became friends with, like outside of poker through frisbee, and then
You stuck with frisbee that whole you just like consistently.
I don't remember the first league that we played. It might have been like winter 2022, or it might have been 2012. Winter or spring 2012, something like that. So like 6 months after I moved there. But once I started meeting people, what ends up happening is like, oh, you're a half decent player who can run fast. Like, you want to sign up for this tournament? You want to join this team? You want to join that team? Because everyone's looking for players to like.
Because it's not that big a sport, or.
Yeah, it wasn't that big of a community, and I don't know. I think just they're like excited to have new people who have potential to like join. I think that's like a refreshing thing about a community like that, is that they like welcome new players and they try to make them better. And you get a lot of that, like athletes coming from other sports or athletes just like trying a sport for the first time. Frisbee's super welcoming to those people. So I just loved it. I was just like, I very quickly went from playing once or twice a week to playing like 4 or 5 times a week.
Oh, wow.
And I met a ton of people, and I played a bunch of tournaments. Eventually joined a team that would like travel for tournaments across Canada.
Any big wins, or is you still struggling to find a win in a?
We won a couple of smaller tournaments. Often it would be like there's like an A division and a B division. We won the B division, or like we went to we won a tournament that you play on a frozen lake in Sudbury in February. That was
Wait, what?
Yeah, we played all the tournaments, and the Frisbee community is a little bit weird in this way. Like,
Shocker.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought it was like the most? I don't know.
Pretty esoteric. But you play it on a frozen lake?
Yeah.
Is it slippery?
Well, no. There's like 3 feet of snow over it.
Oh.
So they basically just like pack down. Well, actually, they don't really pack down the snow. You just show up in like your snow pants and your boots, and you pack down the snow yourself by playing on the field. It's
Oh my God, this is the most Canadian thing I've ever heard in my life.
It is a very Canadian thing. Yeah. It was really
you all
really
chugged a
fun.
bottle of maple syrup first, and then just like.
I mean, a couple of our teammates, my partner Leah included, grew up in Sudbury.
Okay.
So we had that connection, and we just knew that they ran this tournament, and yeah, mostly we just played in the summer, obviously.
Right.
But once we found out that there was like, oh, there's a February tournament in like freezing weather, sounds fun, and it used to bring out like 16 teams would show up, and it'd be like a competitive 2-day tournament.
Oh wow, that's
So
incredible.
I think I played that 4 or 5 times, and we won it once.
And then when did you start? So like 2000. When did you start getting into cooking?
So I guess
'Cause you went to school. You went to like a culinary school.
I did, yeah. I was introduced to the idea by my roommate Tim. This would have been like late 2013 or early 2014. He was a pretty good cook, poker player also, and he had taken a few classes at George Brown College, which was not far from where we lived. So we I don't know, we cooked our own food reasonably often, like certainly more than I did the couple years prior, and I just got interested in it. He highly recommended, hey, if you want to get better, just go take like a knife skills class or go take an intro to culinary class or whatever. So eventually, after I had moved, I moved in with Leah, and we lived like a 10-minute walk from George Brown College. And just kind of by chance, like once I lived there, I was super close. I was like, maybe I will do that. So I think it was in 2015, I started taking night classes. And again, it was just like the most fun. I think I was like a little bored of poker, or like a little bit detached from poker, probably around the same time that I was playing a ton of Frisbee. And then I was like, oh, I can just spend my evenings doing this. And I did that. And very quickly I realized like, oh, not only could I be good at this, but also there's a ton to learn. Like there's just so much interesting stuff to learn. I forget his name, but like the first chef who taught the intro class for me was just like, I thought he was really talented at teaching. Like he's not, a Michelin star chef or anything, but he was just like 30, 40 years in the college, like really knew how to teach the fundamentals of cooking. So I just felt like immediately I was becoming a better home cook, better prepared at things, just like better organized. I learned all the like essential stuff that you learn with cooking. That was really appealing to me. So I just went for it, signed up for a 2-year program, did the whole thing. When did I finish? 2018? Yeah. So I was like a little behind pace. I was doing it on my own.
3-year?
It's like meant to be a 2-year program, but because I was doing it as continuing education, like nights and weekends and that kind of thing, it took a little bit longer because they didn't always offer all the classes at the right times. And
Gotcha. I feel like that's that's something that I could see that being super rewarding, because it's just like eating is a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Eating. And I was reading in Tim Ferriss's book, 4-Hour Chef. I don't know if you've ever delved into that, but one of the things he was talking about is how often in the beginning, how once he started learning to cook, like every meal for him just like changed his experience of it. Like it's just like now people just like eat and just like don't really think about it.
Yeah.
I feel like I
have the opposite problem now. Now I think way too much about every meal that I eat.
Yeah.
Because I like know what it could be.
Yeah.
And it takes like a lot of self-control for me to let go of that and just be like, this is just gonna be boiled eggs. Like that's fine. I just need a quick meal. I'm just gonna boil these eggs. I'm just gonna eat them.
Do you prepare a lot of your food still? Like, do you cook a lot of your food that's stuck?
Yeah.
Is that like a lot of time?
It can be. Yeah. Like definitely, let's say since I got back to traveling for live poker, so like maybe the last 2 years, I've devoted more effort to like cooking quickly, cooking efficiently, like batch cooking, that kind of thing. Because it's not as like flashy, it's not as Instagrammable or whatever,
Yeah.
but it serves a really important function at home to be able to cook like once or twice every 2 or 3 days, not like 3 intensive meals every single day. But definitely like, early COVID when I was just stuck at home, like I would just cook an elaborate project like every single day. And
Yeah, anyone
it was
who's
super fun.
who's seen your Instagram knows how important your Instagrammable meals are to you.
I mean, not so much lately. Like I'll go through my camera reel every now and then and be like, oh, okay, do I have 4 or 5 meals that I could share from the last like month? Because I'm just not, it's not that the meals that I'm making aren't good. It's just I'm not putting that kind of attention into it anymore. It's more about like, how can I make this quick? How can I make it last for 2 more days?
Is like having a restaurant or anything like, is that ever something you'd want to do?
I definitely thought I did, but part of the culinary program was working in the industry, and that pretty quickly convinced me I don't want to do that.
It's just too much work, or
Yeah, there's just like a lot of, I don't know, this is going to sound like very privileged, I feel like, but it's just like if you're trying to work your way up as a cook or a chef, it's like exceptionally hard work, and it's really like you just have to invest a lot to make your way to the top, and then you get to the top and it's like not even that amazing, right? Like you don't get like a medal, you don't get like $200,000. There's no like prize at the end. It's all about just like, well, it's not all, but a lot of it is about like being passionate about specifically that path and feeling a lot of like, I don't know, getting the reward from like the pride you feel of being an accomplished chef and being able to serve
couldn't you just
people
like
in that
open your
way.
own kitchen though, and like,
Yeah, and just like not be very good at it. I mean, I could, but again, like I don't like to do things I'm not very good at. I think I could do fine as like an owner slash manager of a restaurant, maybe. But like I don't even know. I have 6 months of experience working at one catering company
that's all it takes.
/ cafe, and I learned a lot from the chef there, and I learned a lot from the owner there. But like, I don't know. It's a big commitment. Basically, is I had like an idea, like, oh, that'd be cool. Like maybe I could move my way up quickly, and then I talked to one of the instructors at George Brown. She's like an extremely talented chef. She had been on Top Chef Canada All-Stars, I believe, or like Top Chef Canada. And she was like, oh yeah, and she graduated the same, I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's a big deal. And she graduated the same program that I was working on and told me that she spent 7 years working her way up to sous chef in like a high-end Italian restaurant in Toronto. I was just like, it took you 7 years to get to number 2.
Yeah.
When you're like one of the most talented people I've ever seen in a restaurant. And I'm just like, no thanks. Like forget about it.
That has to mean a lot to you.
Yeah.
That's so were you thinking about, you said you were like discouraged by poker. I think I've heard you say you were thinking about leaving poker when you were doing the cooking school.
Yeah.
What convinced you not to do that? If not just for the fact that cooking wasn't it, did poker get exciting to you?
Pretty much, yeah. Honestly, like live tournaments brought me back to being excited about poker.
How'd that happen?
I mean, I don't remember exactly like why I was so drawn to going to whatever events, but I always used to go to, let's say, like 2 stops a year. As a cash game player or an online player, I would still go to the World Series for the main event, maybe like a couple other events. Sometimes I go for the heads up event. Maybe I'd go to like, if there was something at Fallsview or Playground Poker, which were just like close, local Canadian stops, I would go to those, but that was about it. And then at some point, I like connected with a few people in Toronto who were going to travel to the Bahamas for the PSPC, the first PSPC in 2019. And it sounded really big and really good, and I got some backing, and I just went out there. I bought a tournament course because I wanted to prepare.
Which tournament course?
Ben CB's, whatever it's called. Yeah, the original one. And I went through that, and I was just like, this seems great. I'm going to work on this. I went and played the whole series, got torched, like lost everything I played.
And you're like, this is unacceptable.
Punted it off on stream in the main event, like 10 off the money, the 10K main.
On stream?
Yeah, I mean, it was a nothing spot. I had like 13 bigs, and it was just a really obvious like ICM spot fold. And I was just so inexperienced with ICM. I was just like, I think this is supposed to be all in for 13 big blinds.
Yeah, that's fair.
Not. So it wasn't even good for chips.
So the ICM consideration,
I think part of it was like, oh, there's an opportunity for me to learn a lot about this game. And then the other part was like, this game is blowing up right now, and there's a lot of like promotional opportunities. Right after that, the Party Poker Tour offered a promo where if you played 5 of their 10K main stops across the year, they would give you a 6th one for free. So they would just buy you in. And it wasn't even just 5-1. It was different currencies. It was like if you played, I believe it was South America, North America, Canada, online, and what was the 5th one?
Antarctica.
Probably not. Whatever the 5th one was, they would buy you into the UK stop in at Dusk Till Dawn for free, and the UK tournament was 10K pounds.
Oh yeah, so it's like
better
like
than you're getting like $15K free if you play one of the events was 10K Canadian, and then a couple of the events were 10K US.
10K Canadian's like 50
cents.
cents.
I probably yeah. So it's probably like, I don't know, 45K US worth of buy-ins to get 15K US free. So it was just like a crazy promo.
That's insane.
So immediately I was like, I think I'm going to go to Brazil, and I'm going to play the first stop. And like not that many people even showed up, so you knew right away that they weren't going to be giving away that many free seats or anything.
Because you had to do exactly those ones.
Yeah, you had to hit all of them. Like you couldn't miss one. So if you didn't make it to South America, you just weren't going to be able to qualify. But that was big. So me and a few friends from Toronto, I'm just like, yeah, it seems like great value. Let's just do this. Booked it, started playing. Basically just played the whole year of live tournaments because I was already traveling around. I mean, I'm already committed to like 6 trips minimum. Oh, the other one was Rosvedov. That's what it was, King's Casino. So it was 10K euro. The one I forgot about was I was there for like 3 days. That was stupid. But
why was this? Is there a story here?
Not really. It was it was just to meet the qualifications. I was like, all right, well, I got to fly to all these places, and I just have to play the main, and that's the only important thing. I had like a friend's wedding in Chicago right after.
Oh,
so I went out there. I went out there like it takes like, I don't know, 16 hours to get there from where I was living at the time, and then I had to fly the whole way back to get to Chicago. And
in 3 days?
If I had made day 3, which like wasn't even that hard to do, I would have missed the wedding. So I just like booked everything as if I was going to leave early on day 2, and like no surprise, I bust on day 1. I feel like I like set myself up to just light 10K on fire and then go straight to the wedding.
And it's the one that's a 10K euro?
Yeah.
So like you could have just not done that and just bought into the London one, right?
True.
Because those are about the same.
It was like, I don't know. At the time, it was probably like 3K more value on the 10K pound.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
like,
it's close.
I'm sure I didn't fully punt it, but
yeah.
I did not want to be there.
Yeah.
You know, that was one of those. But I played a lot of live poker in 2019. Like that just kind of all led to me playing, I don't know, 12 or 15 trips in that year, and a few at the start of 2020 as well. So I was just like all in on live poker up until COVID.
And that was when you're just like, all right, I guess this is what I'm doing now.
Just got into tournaments.
Yeah.
I just wanted, from there to now, it was just like, how do I get better at tournaments? Because these are really fun. It's an exciting new format for me. I see there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of growth. So
what's been your approach? How have you gotten better at tournaments? I know it's a big question, but
to things. A big one was finding a study group. I connected with a lot of people, or like during COVID, I connected online with a lot of players who are like longtime tournament players, American and European, different backgrounds. Friend of mine brought together, I don't know, 20 of us or something just to like share ideas. We would meet on Zoom all the time. We would share material. It was really helpful. Like everyone was just, it was kind of an agreement. It's like, hey, we're going to share everything we have with each other, and we're just going to do this as long as it makes sense. It's definitely slowed down ever since live poker's come back because everyone's like on their own schedules and moving about a lot. But for like 18 months, I was just talking with a bunch of tournament players like daily about tournaments, and I played a bunch. I think that makes a huge difference. I mean, that's how I learned the game originally.
Yeah.
Just talking to people and playing a lot. So that was huge. There's definitely some material that I went through, but like, I don't think that I would give a whole lot of credit to any particular study tool or any particular course or anything. I just tried to absorb like tournament knowledge, be around tournament players, play a lot of tournaments. I mean, that was what I needed, I think, more than anything. Because like I know poker, I know no limit hold'em, right? But I just didn't really understand like the technicals of what people are, not only what they're focused on, but also like where they think they make the most money. Because it's not obvious to, like, coming from Heads Up and coming from cash games, it just wasn't clear to me like where the value was. So that quickly made it clear, I think.
What, like, was there something like particularly challenging about switching to tournaments, or that you continue to find that like a challenge that tournaments present that you think other formats don't?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a few. I guess I'll give like two answers. One just as a cash game player, I think I was conditioned to believe that post-flop play was the most important part of the game. And I think that still, to some extent, like hinders my performance in tournaments, because now I pretty firmly believe that pre-flop play is more important by a long shot.
Regardless of the format?
No, not regardless, but like in terms of impact on the dollars that you will make in your typical multi-table tournament structure, all of the highest value decisions that you tend to make are pre-flop. Or maybe put another way, like all the biggest potential I've seen to make like large dollar mistakes in tournaments happen pre-flop.
Is this just, I mean, obviously, like as you approach the money and when you're going deeper on the money, like the cost of decisions is a lot more, but even before that, would you say that?
Not necessarily, but just like the format is designed in a way where like post-flop decisions get devalued over time because you get progressively shorter because the blinds are escalating, and as you get progressively shorter, the dollar value of all the decisions you're making is going up. So like all the like big, I mean, I think this is a main reason why cash game players, at least in my experience, have this like perception that tournament players are horrible, because they see post-flop mistakes in early stages of the tournament, or even post-flop mistakes in later stages of the tournament, and they like tunnel vision those and they say like, wow, that was a blunder that I would never make.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they've made like 25 blunders leading up to that point in pre-flop play and just like dismiss them as unimportant, because pre-flop play in cash games is like honestly kind of easy. So I think that once I like reframed my understanding of where the value was in all the different pre-flop spots that you play, because there's just so much nuance, right? Like different stack distributions, different levels of the tournament, different skills of different players, different prize pools and field sizes that change distributions. And then all of that adds like, well, just different layers of complexity within each of those things that I just mentioned, right? So like pre-flop's just crazy complicated.
It's interesting because what's fascinating about that is I feel like when I talk to a lot of tournament players, I hear pretty like widely different, I don't know if I'd say different approaches, but like I will hear pretty widely different opinions on like what is a good pre-flop decision in certain spots, which is fascinating. Which it makes sense what you're saying is true, but like how do you marry that? Like I can see, I have a few people in mind who I don't want to like put on blast, but like who can defend like certain opens or certain pre-flop decisions in one spot that another, who I would consider both great players, but they just like would vehemently disagree about what is good there. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't know the spot, and like I don't know that I want to try and like break down where those differences would happen, but I'm basically just thinking that there's like, it's much harder to model the pre-flop game in tournaments than it is in cash games. It's getting easier, but like it's still very hard to model it. And for that reason, I think there's a lot of like difference in opinion on how to approach those unmodelable situations. At the same time, I don't necessarily think those are the big EV loss potential spots. I think there's just like, it's not that hard to model final tables, for example. But if you haven't studied final tables, like there's a good chance you've just made like 20 buy-in mistakes at a final table at some point, which is just like a crazy size of mistake to ever make in any situation.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're not really good at final tables, obviously these situations come up rarely, so like it's not necessarily going to make or break your career as a tournament player. But the more often you make final tables, like the more often you get decisions like that are worth just like a crazy number of buy-ins. And if you haven't studied the model before, it is actually kind of easy. At least to me, it would have been easy to make gigantic mistakes, like really, really big mistakes. And I've made what feel like small mistakes that are actually like 2 buy-ins or whatever, which I guess when you're at the final table of like a 1,000-player tournament is not that much, right? But that just happens all the time. So it's really important to know that stuff. And I suspect that the players you're talking about wouldn't disagree so vehemently about those kind of spots. I think it would just be a matter of like, have you studied this or not?
Yeah, I guess into some of the situations I'm thinking of is more like early stage tournament play too. Like I see players approach early stage tournament plays very differently. Or like,
especially if you're talking like open field main events where people have like different styles to approach the minefield, so to speak, right? Like, I'm not convinced that makes a huge difference.
That's fair. Because it's, I mean, these are the lowest cost decisions anyway.
Yes.
Right.
Those are where the pre-flop decisions are the least costly.
Right. So given that though, like, at what point of like a tournament player's career should they start? So like, I'm a brand new tournament player. I'm trying to get great at tournaments. At what point do I need to start? Because ICM can be very daunting for people. At what point do you think a player should start studying these like super high cost decisions because they're also super rare? So like, how do you you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to be facing them a lot. So like, I would imagine like my instincts would be like, well, just like, don't worry about that. Yes. Like, don't worry, like focus on just like solid chip EV play. But at what point there's got to be a trade-off where it's like you're half decent at chip EV play.
Yeah.
Start paying attention to, don't perfect like.
Pretty much that. Yeah. Like I think it depends where they're coming from, right? If it's someone who has like pretty poor fundamentals in general, then that's more important than ICM. So if I was working with like a recreational player who hasn't played a lot of any format, but they wanted to focus on tournaments specifically, I'd be like, all right, well, let's have you working on chip EV pre-flop. Let's have you working on shallow stack post-flop. Let's have you working on just routine, like high frequency situations that are going to come up all the time, right? And then maybe talk through some concepts about like how to approach limping or multi-way or whatever. And that would be more important than ICM, I think, for a while. But anyone with good fundamentals, I think, should be learning ICM like now, right?
Interesting.
Once your fundamentals are good, they're good. There's no
like, once you have an in the money percentage of 7 to 17%, like you're just gonna be getting to final tables enough that like I think the value very quickly, if you're cleaning up like big obvious mistakes in your game, I think the potential for like correcting your ROI and improving your results long term are gonna hinge on ICM decisions a lot more. I know I'm giving like a qualitative like, I don't know how good you need to be at chip EV before you move on to that stage, but if you're like a cash game player, I mean, I've worked with a handful of cash game players who are like, I just want to switch to tournaments. And if they're like decent cash game players, I'm thinking of a few people in particular I worked with last year. They were good enough at live cash that I was just like, we're not looking at anything deep at all. We're not going to look at anything without ICM at all. We're just going to look at shorter stack play, because they're also, the way live tournaments work, you're normally playing short stacked when there is ICM in play, right? You're not often playing 20 big blind chip EV. You might do that more often in online tournaments or like certain structures, but you're not playing a lot of 20 big blind chip EV in a live tournament. So like, you can just kind of not learn that at all. If you have like pretty good fundamentals, you could just go straight to like, okay, a little bit of ICM, bubble play, final table play, like that kind of thing. And we just like almost only focused on that. I think that's good for someone with like a strong background in a different format. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even the pre-flop, I don't know, it's tough though, because even the pre-flop, I found that like the pre-flop play of chip EV does, I don't know, it differs in unintuitive ways once you start introducing like there's way more pre-flop flatting, even when you're deep and like the ante. But again, like, you're probably, it makes sense. Like, if you're a decent player, you're probably not making a lot of like huge blunders at these spots. You might like some slight wrong hand selection.
Yeah, and if it's like, if you've never played with a big blind ante before, I mean, run some pre-flop drills, right? Like, open up the trainer and just That's mandatory, I think, for everyone. I'm kind of skipping over like do pre-flop drills, but I do think everyone, pretty much regardless of their skill, like spend 30 minutes every time you're studying, just doing some pre-flop drills. Like I do that.
I do it every time before I play like a big Sunday session or something like that.
That seems really important. And like,
yeah,
I don't know, for a while it was unintuitive to me, just like what am I supposed to call versus a 20 big blind rejam, or like what am I supposed to open, raise, and fold from various positions. And
yeah,
I mean, it's not hard to get good at that quick if you have like good game sense, but it does take repetition. So that's important. I think for live players too, that's actually really valuable because you just don't get that many reps of those situations. And then just like add in the caveat of like, hey, people don't play like that, but you should practice it anyways.
Do you find because of like just the nature of tournaments, like do mistakes late stage of tournaments, do they like, was there ever a point, or do they still like emotionally affect you more than like mistakes when you were like a cash game player? Like, because for me, I've had the experience, right, of like making a mistake at a later stage of a tournament. I think a lot of players can relate to this, and feeling like there is this sense like the next time I get to correct that mistake will be like, could be a while before I get the opportunity to be in that situation again and like not make that mistake.
Yeah.
Do you find that, or did you ever, or do you still like, does that happen for you?
I think that's still how I feel.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that really goes away. I mean, it's just, you're just playing a bigger game. Like I experienced that playing big cash games too. I don't know if it's exactly the same feeling. But if I would relate like a big mistake on a high stakes cash game to like a big mistake in the final 2 or 3 tables of a tournament, like same kind of just like heightened expectations, heightened emotional response. Yeah, I don't think that goes anywhere.
Yeah. Did you ever like find, I know you've worked with like Jason Su and stuff like that. Did you ever find that like, did that ever like the way you were feeling during moments, did that ever feel like a serious hindrance to your game, or was it more just like I just want to like fine tune things, like make it like?
I think there's a difference. I mean, I think in the moment it feels like a big hindrance, but I think when you reflect on it, it's like that didn't change that much.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But it's different when you're in it and when you're
right reflecting on it. Yeah.
So definitely, I mean, I've talked with Jason about some stuff. Almost everything I've talked with Jason about when it comes to like, I don't know, heightened emotion before, during, after tournaments has always just been like a reminder of the reality of like the bigger picture kind of thing. Because you do just get caught up in the moment. Like you really, I don't know, I think that's a general performance thing, right? Like you get caught up in the moment of feeling like, oh, this exact moment is like everything. This is all that matters. Like everything's hinging on this decision. It's just like, no, it's not. Like this is just like a little speck of a thing that's happening along the timeline of all the things. Like, yeah,
that makes sense. What's do you have any big? I know we're working on some things, but big coaching goals or anything like that? Because I know you're got like,
yeah. I mean, I just think that like over the last, let's call it year, the people who have approached me or the people I've approached to work together have been like more and more ambitious. I don't want to call it like a specific goal, but I just think that, I mean, I referenced earlier, like I'd be excited if one of my students won a bracelet or like won something huge. I think that's like more the direction I'm heading in, is like I'm working with top players or people who aspire to be top players. That's really exciting because I'm also trying to be a top player, and like I'm also kind of in that, and it's just different because before coaching's still a business for me, but I think that when I started, let's say like a formal coaching business, it was just like, all right, what's the right price to reach the people who want to work with me? And I just work with everyone, try to help everyone. And I really enjoyed that. Like I like doing that. I got like a lot of great perspective on what different players needed and what all the things I could offer were. But it's just like, at the end of the day, it's not super exciting to be working without like a goal for the player, right? So now I'm working with more people who have like goals to win big things, goals to be like top competitors. So that just in itself is really exciting.
Do you have any players you've worked with like for a large portion of their career who like maybe from being like a serious recreational or like a, let's, for lack of a better term, like bad reg, through to like them being like much more like consistently worked with them through the whole process?
Not so much. I've worked with there's like a few people I can think of who I've worked with on and off who have like progressed from some games to different games, right? And that's always cool, like the longer duration check-ins where the type of stuff that we're talking about is actually changing, and I can tell that they're like working on different stuff independently from me. That's definitely like the goal in how I present coaching. Is for someone to come back to me like 6 months later with something totally different and be like, hey, I worked through all this and now I'm doing this instead. So those are fun. The people I've worked with like the longest have kind of more been like, well, either people that I've had like CFP arrangements with or staking arrangements with. And even they have kind of gone through the same thing where it's like not just coaching, right? Like those relationships are different. It's more mentorship. It's more like, let's find the right game for you right now. And if it's not what we were working on 2 years ago, who cares? Like, that's fine. You're just moving through your career to this next thing, and you're moving through your career to this next thing. So those are rewarding in a different way because I think you just build up like a different type of relationship with that person. But I think that's just like, because of the structure of my coaching, that's inevitably the people I interact with the most over the years. Because if there's a staking arrangement, there's just like more that needs to be done. If there's not a staking arrangement, it's like, all right, well, come to me when you need me, right?
Yeah.
Go on, be free. And I just don't hear from those people as often.
Yeah,
naturally.
All right, so now we have our game of 2 truths and a lie. So go with yours. All right, I'm
okay.
I'm dialed in.
You're waiting for my 3.
Yeah,
my 3 truths.
Your 3 truths.
So I'm going with to come up with things that you wouldn't have heard before. I'm going with a theme. I'm going with educational events from my past, because when I'm thinking of me younger, it's like all school stuff. That's just like my whole childhood. So I forget ages, but doesn't matter. Longest ago, let's call it elementary school, I medaled in the Latin Olympics. And then middle school, early high school, I finished top 3 in I believe the acronym was AIME, the like math competition that qualifies you for the International Math Olympiad.
Okay. You finished what?
Well, you needed to be top 3. Well, whatever. This is part of like questioning.
You finished top 3. I just want to
high enough to like write the international test. And second year in high school, I did a summer program at Stanford in astrophysics.
Oh man, these are all very subtle flexes of your intellect. One of them isn't true. Okay, so let me just repeat them so I know them. It was like elementary school. You first place Latin Olympics, medal, first, just a medal,
just
medal, top 3, podium.
Yeah, podium,
Latin Olympics, math competition. You came high enough,
qualified for
the international math and then third, summer program in your second year, summer program in astrophysics.
Correct.
So what the hell is a Latin Olympic?
Fair question. Well, I was young, so I don't really remember. But my memory of it was like we all took Latin in elementary school, and there would be like competitive tests around your knowledge of like mythology or the language, or
it was just like a school-based Olympics, not like it didn't go.
Schools were competing against other schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mythology, you said, was referenced.
I'm pretty sure that was part of the... I know I learned that.
Next question. Did you compete in the international math competition? You qualified?
Yes. So the way it works is you like write a test and submit it. That's like competing.
Oh, okay. And you qualified, and then you actually...
I wrote the international test.
Oh, I see. Okay.
After scoring high enough in it was like the state competition.
Okay. How'd you do in the international?
Very poorly.
Okay.
Like about as poorly as you can do.
Okay. Astrophysics summer.
Yeah.
What made you want to do that?
I had a close friend who also signed up, and it sounded cool, and we just went for it.
Did you enjoy it?
Very much.
What did you learn? What did you enjoy?
Well, I guess specifically we were learning relativity. We were learning about, and like I didn't really learn much because it was really hard math, like way above my
there was no
my
prerequisites level for getting into this.
You just like wrote your It was like submit a resume.
Yeah.
Do you qualify? Do you have $3,500?
$3,500
Think it was
for an astrophysics summer camp?
it was expensive. Yeah.
Man, you are such a nerd. Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with my instinct. For the record, I have been notoriously terrible at this game, but I'm gonna go with my instinct, which was your middle one, which was the math thing.
As the lie?
That's the lie.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I just need to learn to like. Yes.
Yeah.
That's that. Oh, let's go. All right.
I felt like I explained the other two too well.
Damn. So I guess we chop, which is a huge step up for me so far in this.
Well,
so
I'm happy for you.
with Maria, I guessed first, dead wrong. Guessed second, wrong. Her lie was the third one for me to guess, and she guessed mine so unbelievably quickly. It made me embarrassed to be a poker player.